So this is another episode of my book. I don't know if you see it upside down or sideways. Anyway, it's called Stuck is Not a Place. And I'm continuing reading out of it, and I think it's my third episode now reading from the book. And this time I'm exploring the different aspects of myself and how I developed. And the first part of this is called the child first bonding. It's got a little hot here. It's snowed outside, but my wood stove is really hot right now, so it's very cozy in here. And reading to you is a joy. To share this with you is a true joy. So first bonding. Where did it start? When and where did Spirit first call me into my presence? I remember lying in my crib and feeling comforted. I need this comfort so that I am not swallowed up by the longing for my mother or some other nurturing person. I instead felt comforted by an all-enveloping presence which introduces me to the light and shapes dancing around my crib. I can still feel that today, sense it, see it. It was very early and very, very profound. As I watch this, it feels like my little body is completely taken care of. The shapes and colors of light nourish me on emotional, physical, and most of all, spiritual levels. And I believe that's what has accompanied me, deeply recorded in my cellular memory all of my life. A very important experience. I'm born into the middle of the Second World War in Germany. My parents separate when I am 7 months old. It is 1943, and we are evacuated with my father's household to the countryside in order to escape Allied bombing. 2 years later, we are returned to my mother while my father spends 2 years in a British prison camp. When I'm 5 years old, we return to live with my father again. My parents are coping with the experiences, surviving the war, their personal relationship with each other, and finally, the divorce. As a small child, support isn't available from them, and I look for another source. After my experience with the light, and no longer in my crib, I discover the plants and trees and the ones who take care of them, the nature spirits. I touch that life force emanating from beings beyond our physical world. And they, in turn, touch me. Having been denied comfort of a human presence, the soft embrace of my mother, her breast, her voice and smile, I turn to the cradling arms of light and nature. That spirit continues to offer me, and so I begin my life with what I later called touchback. They touch me, I touch them back. More about nature now. Dewdrops hang on the blades of grass, reminding me of the earlier shapes of light. My eyes rest on them and then slide down to find the little crawling, flying friends that make their homes between the grass stalks in the most in the moss and in the dirt. I can become them. It's quite simple. The curiosity of the human child blends with the remembered comfort of light, of spirit. This is my real home, the one that is safe and questionless, an easy flow of communication expressed in shapes, in colors, in movement, in glorious, intricate design. I am in love with my life in nature on this planet called Earth. Every quivering blade of grass on which a grasshopper is resting, every ray of sunshine reflected of the sure lines of a spider web, every bit of dirt crumbling in my hands, every leaf floating on the wind and drifting lightly towards me in a soft dance, all these things teach me. I watch and feel their presence. These teachers belong to the timeless, magical world of nature. My, quote-unquote, animals, trees, flowers, streams, clouds, rocks, storms, stars, and skies, with their unending songs, became my emotionally accepting and loving parents, brothers and sisters. These chosen relatives nurtured me, cheerfully or powerfully awakened me, kept me in balance as much as possible during the day, and sang me to sleep at night. They touched me in my soul, and we established a giving and receiving relationship based on a mutual joy of exchange. I played in my sandbox, decorating my sculptures with worms and caterpillars and little daisies at preschool age, watched the hens and roosters while sensing their pecking order language, or delighted in the round pigs happily and deeply digging and rolling in the mud, or sat with my back against a large tree, cradled in its roots and shaded by the vast leafy canopy overhead. All of these experiences simply seem to say, you have a place here with us, on this earth. Your love and care for us is greatly appreciated. In fact, we grow in strength and beauty because of you, because of your caring. You allow us to touch you back. What a revelation. What I learned from my nature friends was that they and I were not only deeply related, but I had the sense we depended on each other for a mutual healing energy exchange that can only happen through love and thoughtfulness, in which giving is receiving, one of the same. It was the one and consistent feedback I could always depend on that taught me to believe in myself when no one else in the human world was capable or available to see or hear me. These early teachers of touchback have accompanied me ever since. My parents' abandonment of me has brought the first gift, and the best gift of all. I will never be able to drown in loss or get swallowed by my grief. The memory of the oneness will be too strong to allow me to disappear in the roles of the dramas I so expertly create later in my life. And so the woods and the streams, the rocks, the plants, and the wild animals become my mother and father and help me to survive. After the war, as a child living in West Germany, after the war, the earliest stories I remember hearing were of people escaping from East Germany, from the Russians, from each other. We had little food, and at the beginning of the week, each one of us got a little slice of butter, and we had to decide whether to put it all on one piece of bread or ration it for the whole week. I was between 3 and 5 years old. My mother walked long distances to our farm, now occupied by British troops, and she walked for milk and groceries, and we children sat for hours making the milk shaking the milk in old bottles. Still remember sitting on the sofa trying to shake the milk so it would develop little lumps which we could use for butter. Once she brought eggs for all 4 of us children, but since I was the youngest, I had to share mine with our maid, and I resented it and felt guilty not wanting to share. My sister and I, we were about 4 and 6 years old, would stand on the streets and waving to the American GIs when the Allied forces came through our town. Riding in their jeeps, they would just throw chewing gum and chocolate to the children lining the roads, treats we had never seen, let alone tasted. My grandfather and his son, my uncle, were imprisoned by Russians. Both were successful and well-known scientists and engineers, people with the kind of experience Russia badly needed. My grandfather, a kind and completely apolitical man, the head of a big family who he always helped out. My mother has wonderful stories about this good soul, philanthropic man. He died in the camp after a year, and Uncle Max was never heard from again. I felt helpless and powerless when I was a little girl, carrying the guilt of the Holocaust all through my childhood in Germany and beyond. The first television movies I remember being shown in Germany were of the persecution of the Jewish people. But my history classes in high school were taught by a former Nazi who didn't want to teach us anything about World War II. We students, children and teenagers didn't understand why Germany, our own people, hated the Jews so much to want to kill them. But somehow we felt it was our fault that so many suffered. Something was terribly wrong with the people who followed this Hitler into destruction and horror. Something was wrong with me. We were still hearing stories about escape, rape, hunger, bombs, and blitzkrieg from the elders around us, and in the cities people were furiously removing rubble, trying to rebuild. I remember going through an old section in Cologne and seeing a house cut in half. And on the exposed second floor, I could see a white bathtub hanging on a ledge. And on the third floor I saw a piano. It still shakes me to the core. I never stopped to wonder who had lived there, if they had liked participating in practicing piano as much as I did, and what happened to them. Today, I still search to know their destinies. I am trying to complete something undone in myself. For many years, I escaped from uniformed men in my recurring nightmares. Horses as teachers. My early years, however, were not only based on survival. Eventually, I discovered horses. They were my first love affair. My father gave us our first pony when I was 6. He was an adorable looking little black thing who had hundreds of ingenious ways of throwing me off his back. He also ate the buttons of my coat. Every day I had to convince myself that I still loved this little trickster and wanted to ride him again. I rode horses until I left from Germany. Then I left Germany for the United States when I was 19. According to Chinese astrology, I was born in the year of the horse. The horse has always been a powerful presence in my personal mythological journey. And I have often asked myself, what did all the many horses I knew and rode teach me? First and foremost, they taught me adventure. Imagine sitting on a high-spirited young horse that is afraid to cross the stream, and you somehow have to show him how to not be afraid. Meanwhile, your own heart is pounding, while you try not to lose your balance as the horse rears up on the hind legs, and you hope that you will not slide off his back and end up in the stream yourself. Horses have also taught me patience, timing, sensitivity, and intuition while practicing different gaits and steps and jumps. I learned how to hold the reins, how much pressure it takes to communicate gently through my hands, my weight, my seat, my legs, my whole body, so that this huge animal will trust me and perform the way I want him to, especially at a horse show when in competition with my older brother and sister, I wanted to win that colorful ribbon. That didn't happen very often because they were always way ahead of me. Horses taught me about speed and even recklessness when we were riding a hunt. The barking dogs remarkably and miraculously did not get trampled. The hunting horns filled the crisp autumn air. Horses sped past me, and I would attempt with every muscle in my body and every movement I had learned to stay fluid and to jump the next hurdle. You must know that I'm not very athletic. My sister and brother were way ahead of me. After a while, my arms would lose their strength, and all I could do was lean over and try to stay loose, trusting and courageously making sure we wouldn't run into other horses, jump on top of a dog or a person, or stumble and fall. You can picture it. It was a crazy, exciting, and often dangerous scene. It was called a fox hunt, but there were no real live foxes involved. We just stuck a tail of a fox on the man or woman that was called the fox, and then we had to race after that person and see if we can take the tail off the jacket. and then next year you would be the fox. Fear was frequently at the top of the pile of lessons. And why did I keep doing this? Why did I settle up again every day? For one thing, I had no choice. We owned a number of horses, we raised them and trained them, and they had to be ridden every day. But it was more than that. The horses I got close to and loved returned that love to me. Knowing my step, their ears would perk up. I'd hear a soft and sound from their nostrils. They searched my pockets for treats. They'd breathe into my ear. They would brush my face with their soft noses, and then almost push me over with their heads when I wasn't watching. I went to the stable whenever I was in need of closeness and that special love. I often felt lonely growing up in a house always filled with people with whom I couldn't share that wordless and gentle affection. It was easy with the horses, although not with all of them. Some were difficult to like, and they could feel my fear of them. I haven't ridden much since I came to the United States because I have learned something else about myself. I don't like to share my horse with anyone else, and there hasn't been the chance to be the sole owner of a horse again. It's a love affair that is not easy for me to share. Maybe it's simply possessiveness, or maybe it is something deeper, surrendering to the willingness to teach and be taught within a relationship that is based on intuition and risk. Good horsemanship demands of one to become a role model in offering trust, safety, gentleness, listening, communicating clearly. Deep intimacy and fine-tuning one's listening skills helps the rider to assess another being's talent and abilities. My experiences with horses were my first natural lessons in relationships, and later a major stepstone towards my becoming a body psychotherapist. And maybe the reason that I haven't had any horses around for so long has been that I am deepening my ability to learn life's lessons with people about adventure, patience, timing, sensitivity, intuition, ownership, caretaking, competition, fear, and finally letting go. It has been always easy for me to see the exquisite beauty in horses, and certainly I've been much less judgmental with horses than I have been with people. That's a tough truth to accept. However, I am deeply grateful to the horses that were my teachers for all the fine lessons we learned from each other. And now I can put those lessons into practice and continue to enhance my sensitivity to the humans in my life. And here's one more chapter, and then we'll close this episode. So this is called First Integration. I am learning that both a human and a spirit child reside in me. As a human child, I had needs that wanted to be met, and I tried to form attachments and dependencies with others in the hope of receiving support. My parents' discordant marital situation, coupled with my birth country's war, provided a challenge and setting which forced me to reach out and stay fiercely connected to the spirit child. In turn, the spirit child felt naturally at home with the plant and the animal kingdoms, which in themselves rest in a balance between life and death. A balance between life and death. Their example of interdependency helped me to cope with the neglect of my birth parents. And I learned to turn to Mother Nature again and again for unconditional love and acceptance. At the same time, the message from the people around me to mistrust my own natural responses to the world were strong, and often overwhelming. My mind and therefore my body compromised when confronted with authoritative human voices. Yet I believe, as a human species, are always looking for the interconnection of the human and the spirit child. When we don't give up, we will eventually remember that the process of longing to belong guides us to experience of our expansive, organic design. And in fact, I would say our divinity, the spark, the creative spark of this huge being that creates all. We need to find a way for our nature and spirit to know, explore, and play with each other.